Good Friday morning, guys. My name is Jerry Miller, and welcome to Real Talk, an insider's guide to real estate life and the pursuit of happiness. We are live in Charlottesville, across the Commonwealth, the country, and the world on the I Love CVille Network. We're presented by Yes Realty Partners. You can find them online at yesrealtypartners.com. The buying and selling process, no easy game. Yes Realty Partners will help navigate that process for you. They will be the North Star and help you get to the closing table. We welcome Dave Fafara of Shenandoah Joe's to the program and to Real Talk.
Yep.
Dave Fafara, a friend of this network and just a guy over 20 years we've grown to admire. Thank you, Dave, for supporting Real Talk. Judah Wickhauer, let's go to the studio camera, my friend. He's our director, and let's welcome a cast of characters. Keith Smith, Sean Tubbs, and Allison Wrabel. You're included in that cast of characters right there, Sean Tubbs.
Allison, please keep us straight. It's going to be your job.
You have a difficult job today, Allison Wrabel. Why don't we start with ladies first? Allison, please, the introduction on you.
I am Allison Wrabel. I've been here for 6 years and 1 month exactly today.
Wow.
I think, working for the Daily Progress. I started covering business when I first got here, and then moved over to the county in early 2017. And I've really enjoyed covering the county. Local government is quite different than business. My favorite thing to say is that people kind of have to call you back sometimes with staff and elected officials to some extent. But businesses don't always have to call you back, so it gets a little tricky sometimes on that end. But I still do a little bit of business coverage now and then, and it's been a fun 6 years and 1 month.
So I'm going to jump in with a quick question. Other than what you just outlined, what is really the big difference between covering business? What was the big transition for you?
It's a lot more, that's a good question. A lot...
More press release oriented.
Yeah, and more, a little, like, obviously more meeting coverage. I did cover some meetings with covering business. The city, at that point, was doing quite a bit with the mayor at the time and business things.
So I can jump in and say it's more impactful. What you write is more impactful on the local, I think, on the local government.
Oh, thanks. I mean, it definitely affects people more. I think a lot of the business stuff too, especially when I was like brand new here, was a lot of like featurey stuff, and it's nice to know what's going on, but unless you can kind of set it to trends or actually tell like a story behind the story with some of that stuff, it's not as impactful, definitely, and maybe not as important to everyone. It's important to the businesses, obviously.
Thank you for clarifying. That's what I meant by impactful. It impacts more people than that. So thank you for correcting me.
Oh, yeah, no worries.
Sean Tubbs is El Presidente of Town Crier Productions. Maybe the best handlebars in Charlottesville. I mean, look at that mustache. You're looking good, homie.
I would like to report on, I think it was my first or second appearance. I said I would invest, that I was going to do this, keep going with it. I have not got the mustache wax yet, but it is coming. I really decided that we're in the third decade of the 21st century. Everything's in throwback. You know, we're in the Gilded Age. Why not go there with your face? You know?
How's business going? What a crazy time to cover Charlottesville.
Yes, and the region. You know, I think that I just want to say I've worked with Allison for six years and 1 month now, I think. I believe Allison is the longest standing reporter at the Progress for many a year with that length of a tenure, which has been great. And of course, it's always great to see her coverage in the paper, because when I'm deciding what I'm going to write, sometimes I don't have to because it's already been written excellently and there's no point.
I will say, though, Brian McKenzie has been here for 30 years.
Oh, I said one of in recent years.
Okay,
He was a columnist for a while, so you really have to start his clock from when he stopped doing the column. Actually, he still does the column.
I think Jerry Hootie Ratcliffe may have the longest standing tenure in the newsroom.
That's sports.
Jerry, sports is
often
big. The most read section of the newspaper.
And it's probably Huey Lewis's best album.
Music reference, Sean knows. There we go. Do you get
Talk
this
about
in
music.
meetings with Sean all the time?
Oh yeah.
Well, I mean,
when we can chat.
Not
obviously.
anymore. I mean, obviously,
not now.
now I'm sitting in a basement all the time, which is fun.
Well, I don't
Virtual
know.
seats are empty.
I don't know about that. I'm on enough meetings where I see your two folks showing up on Zoom meetings. So thank you for doing all attendings in the meetings.
Yes, but in all seriousness, the business is going well. This is a time when there's lots of things. Just a quick plug for myself. I just put out a newsletter with information about climate change. Allison had written that story, but sometimes in my newsletter, it's kind of evolving into sort of more of a something different each time. So this has some information from that, as well as something from Resilient Virginia, all kinds of things to talk about. And I am glad to be here today.
So you want to do a little something? You got a couple of bottles
just
in front
real
of you.
quick. So I've been so busy. I was supposed to do. So Pam Peterson.
Sean.
So Pam Peterson is my aunt. She's 70. She lives in Dunstable, which is a small community just outside London. And she turned 70. And my cousin James asked me to do a video, and of course I forgot. Actually, I didn't forget. We had a lot of news here going on that that possibly made. So I'm pouring a quick little. If you can pass that down there. So just real quick to get it out of the way. To Pam. Just a quick toast to you. Thank you for everything. It's been 2 years since I was over there. You've always been fantastic in terms of it didn't
Pam.
pop. All of that.
We love you, Pam.
So just real quick, a quick
I feel
toast.
like I've known you forever, Pam.
A quick, and when you come over to see you, we're all gonna drink a toast to you for real.
What's the proper British terminology?
I don't
Cheers.
know. Cheers. Yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers to
Cheers.
Pam.
Cheers,
Thank you.
Pam. Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
Salute.
Throw
Now
me
the
up.
show gets better.
Oh, man. All right. We got to talk news. We got the newsroom at the Richmond Times-Dispatch watching us here on Twitter.
And we're
Chris.
drinking.
Let's
That's
get
Chris.
the news.
That's probably
Please,
Chris
let's
Suarez.
get
All
the
right, news. Yes, thank you very much for that. Thanks for indulging me.
All right, so
Happy birthday,
Friday.
Pam.
where do you want to begin, distinguished gentlemen?
Well, I'd like to start with where we kind of ended off on Tuesday, which was the Crozet town. Allison, you wrote a great article back on August 28th, talk of making Crozet a town continues. So I kind of like to take a little bit of a deep dive into that. First thing is, what made you write the article, right? What made you think of it? And what was your major takeaway from all the research that you've done?
So that article in particular actually kind of came out of the Crozet Community Advisory Committee meeting. And so backtracking a little bit, Albemarle with the development areas that it has, each development area and then Places 29 is technically split into 3, but everybody has their own community advisory committee, and their charge really is to help with the master plan and get people involved in the master plan updates and make sure they know what's going on and provide feedback.
So this was a body that was created by the Board of Supervisors, is
Yes,
that correct?
yes.
To go ahead and help them through this process,
I
is that
just
correct?
tagged Mark McKinney. He's going to jump in. He wrote an editorial for the Crozet Gazette on why Crozet should not become a town, speaking specifically of taxes and how it could impact economic development, with Crozet pushing businesses outside of Crozet. Mark is going to offer a very poignant perspective here. Allison, the show is yours. Anywhere you want to go?
I need to go read that. And I think
It's a good article,
I mean,
actually.
that's a good point too, because I've been hearing a little bit more from. I think Mark is a newer resident to Crozet, but I've been hearing more from older residents, older in age and time being there, who are not supportive of becoming a town. And I think a lot of people are kind of on the fence. They want to know more. But really, it's come out of the master plan update process. And I think there's been a little distrust between people in Crozet and county staff and elected officials in that it really, master planning in particular is hard. Obviously, we've seen, and a comprehensive plan, the future land use map is the big deal in Crozet, as it is in the city, in their comprehensive plan update. And I think there is a little bit of misunderstanding about how that works in general, too. I think people see the higher intensity colors and think this is for sure happening right next door to me or near me or down the street where I experience a lot of traffic. And in particular, with the county's master planning process, they're not going to do what the city does, or what the city is considering doing or likely doing, where they're going to use that to do a comprehensive rezoning of the community. The county does it for individual rezonings, and I think there might be some tweaks in their comprehensive plan update of kind of master plan future land use maps overall, but really not at the detail that the city is doing with theirs. But I think a lot of that process has really stirred the town talk again. And at that particular meeting, some people got pretty frustrated with the Board of Supervisors' last round of comments, and we're like, we really need to start looking at what it would take to become a town, and what that means for taxes, and what that would mean for services, and how they would pay for them, and that level of.
Before we go back to the town conversation, Sean, comprehensive plan, what is that? For those who watch are not planning geeks like the four of us here, what is the comprehensive
And I just
plan?
tagged Ann Malik. She'll jump in on the feed here.
Oh, sure.
Since the 70s, I don't know exactly when it showed up exactly, but since the 70s, planners have used comprehensive plans to sort of give an overview of what the local government at that time wants. And of course, in the first Albemarle County Comprehensive Plan, actually envisioned an ultimate build out of 175,000 people. Well, that didn't happen because the reality didn't pan out, and the plan got shrunk into these different designated growth areas such as Crozet, Pantops, the village of Rivanna, and the three H29 ones. In the city of Charlottesville, they're doing that. Greene County is doing it. I believe that Fluvanna County does. It's this thing where it's basically.
But you're obligated. They're obligated to do this.
They're obligated to do it, but the actual level of scrutiny and what that state requirement is actually a pretty low bar,
Vague.
probably.
Very vague.
And so Greene County actually kind of goes a little bit more peaceful, and it's a lot less intense. Here it's in the city and the county, it's a lot more because it becomes this area where people can get together and argue about the future. And of course, we see that in the city with the future land use map and the comprehensive plan happening at this time. The way I liken it is, and I've used this metaphor before, it's kind of like the instruction manual for the role-playing game that is local government and land use, because it can change. It can always change. But I don't think that it's really received a lot of. People don't know about them, and kind of why I call my newsletter, Charlottesville Community Engagement, is to directly hone in on that planning process and more of the implementation.
So, Allison, from your research, what are the struggles to become a town? What hurdles do they need to go over?
I mean, really is getting the community support behind it. I think they actually only have to get 100 signatures.
Correct.
But at the end of the day, I think there are the two avenues you can move through, and in the end, there does need to be enough community support for the process to work out. And then if you do decide to become a town, I don't know exactly where in the process this fits in, but there's a lot of taxing options.
Sure.
And I think there is, and that's what people in Crozet are really looking for right now, is finding out more specifics. There was a Crozet Community Association meeting last night where they had a gentleman from Harrisonburg come in and talk about kind of the process itself and what the options are for the taxes and what it would look like. And I think people want more specifics out of something like that. And I don't know if there is the community support for an actual paid kind of comparison of what it would look like. And I'm sure you could do it if you got information from the county about what taxes in Crozet already look like. But it's an interesting process that no one's really taken other than the kind of exploring and talking about it, no one's taken the next
I've
step.
actually been involved out in town of Columbia in Fluvanna of the dissolution of a town, which took forever to do. I would imagine the reverse would take quite a long time.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's been, I can't think of a new town being created from scratch, except for the other way. See, so you can also go from a city to a town.
Correct.
You can revert, and Martinsville is in the process of doing that with Henry County. The town of Bedford used to be the city of Bedford, and they just got a bus, by the way, which is pretty cool. But I think in this case, I think
buses.
Hey!
And Pam.
Yeah. Hey, Pam. I think what Crozet wants, or what a lot of people in Crozet wants, is control over their land use, and I think that's going to come at a high
Totally
price.
agree.
And so, looking at Scottsville, which is the only town in Albemarle County, which was a town, the way it got to be a town was it was a town historically.
Sir, some of that is in Fluvanna County.
Some of it is in Fluvanna,
Yes,
correct,
so
but
it's a half. So that's important to
yes,
distinguish.
because the town actually predates a lot of the other. But what they have there, of course, is control over their zoning code, and I think that Scottsville is going to be an interesting place to watch. So is Crozet. But look at Standardsville, just to go out and look at Greene. Look at the towns of Louisa and Mineral. I mean, these are places that could become destinations, and but it'd be interesting to compare it. If only somebody would create a newsletter that looked at all of this stuff.
I'm excited to welcome Fitzgerald Barnes, Board of Supervisors, Louisa County, on the show next week. I'm going to read an excerpt from Mark McKinney's editorial or op-ed piece in the Crozet Gazette, just one paragraph, second to last paragraph, Mark McKinney on the Crozet Advisory Committee. He says, if we become a town when it's all said and done, all we will have accomplished is overtaxing business to the point that they decide to leave. Next, we overtax residents to make up for the loss in revenue from businesses. Now residents leave and no one will move to Crozet. We will have done this to ourselves and wasted millions of dollars along the way simply to control development.
And to add to that, the time that it's going to take to get that to happen, the development area is going to ultimately get developed out. It's going to take years and years to get through this town process. The market isn't going to stop. The development isn't going to stop.
And that's what's interesting about Crozet as well, and it's probably something I need to look at more and maybe include in the next story I do about all this, but is what is really left. Obviously, there's always room for redevelopment.
Sure.
But in terms of truly vacant land without any vested
within the metes and
approvals on it.
bounds of the current growth
Exactly,
area.
yeah.
Right, so that's important to talk about, because you can look at Crozet and it can go out different ways, but there's a specific metes and bounds or circumference.
The census designated place of Crozet.
Look at that, huh? Wow.
In the growth area, I guess, but it's essentially
But
the
within
same
that
thing.
footprint, how much is left? That is as much, we talk about this all the time, the 5% that's left in the urban ring, it's really not 5%.
5% of Albemarle County is allocated to development, commercial and residential, and of that 5%, a good chunk of it cannot be developed.
Yeah, you have topographical restrictions, water and sewer restrictions, so forth and so on. It's really not 5%. It's probably a fraction of a percent, to be honest.
Sean Tubbs?
John Tubbs is squirming in his
Possibly,
seat.
but I think in a lot of cases, though, I think that let's pivot the conversation a little bit and think about other ways to maybe get at what Crozet wants.
Great question.
At some point, what if there was a redistrict? This is totally just off the top of my head, but what if there was a redistricting that gave a magisterial district more based around Crozet? That would be one way to check.
Sean, were you watching the meeting last night?
Which one?
The Crozet Community Association?
No.
I didn't see your name on it.
I usually, this week was sort of, I kind of took a week off. I mean, it meant I didn't record as much.
So let's explore that redistricting
Yeah.
comment, because that's important. So
For the sake of a talk show.
But
This
I think
is not
in
the works.
yeah, but I think in terms of
Thank
this
you.
though, but the overarching thing in our community is, do we have the governments that we need in order to adequately connect citizens? And I think you saw this in Charlottesville. I'm sure we might talk about this, we might not, but at the end of the city council meeting, Mayor Walker called for reform in electing a city manager. That conversation of local governance, these are the bigger issues. How do we get to those deeper conversations of how do we reform? If we were to reform, what would be the best way? And the census data that came in for Charlottesville means that Charlottesville could become a town should it want to. That's a conversation that happened about 22, 23 years ago and kind of died quickly. But it is on the table, I think, as we try to figure out how do we provide services in a changing world with a younger generation coming up. They should be having that conversation because it's their world that we're all creating, whether we like it or not.
How are these topics impacted with Virginia being a Dillon rule state?
I think it's, I think that's a tricky question. And in my newsletter today, I think actually the final quote I have is from somebody talking about how Virginia is a weird state with cities and counties being split apart. Makes it difficult to get done, especially when those different jurisdictions start to fight. Metaphorically, like in Dungeons and Dragons, there's no such thing as spells. I don't think. Are there spells? Oh, we're not going there?
I don't know.
who the hell knows?
I don't know.
Only you know this stuff.
I don't know. D&D reference ever in the history of this network. I respect it and
It's the
appreciate
second.
it, my friend.
But I do think it's those questions, and I
Have
think
another
that
sip, will you?
I'm pacing myself. But yeah, I'll just. But these are conversations, and they're nerdy. But of course, I think that we have these questions to ask.
Well,
How are we going to rule ourselves?
Let's dumb it down a little bit. Let's make it a little bit more. People who watch this who do not know what the Dillon rule is, it's
Yeah.
important to explain what that is. So in the state of Virginia, the local jurisdiction cannot do anything that has not been already ordained by the state, right? So that they have this ceiling that they hit. So anything that the local jurisdiction wants to do, it ultimately is dictated by what comes from the state. That's what the Dillon rule, in my vernacular, kind of outlines. Did I get that close, guys?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think, though, you've seen, especially in the last 2 or 3 years, you've seen a lot more changes that you would not have seen previously. But of course, going into that Constitution.
That's because of who's in office at the moment.
Yes, and I think that's exactly it. But there's more of there's more openness to reform and change at this particular moment. And so we'll see. I mean, I think that the city I was looking through the code yesterday for something related, and they got their charter amended this past year. I mean, there's so much stuff that happens, and I think the biggest part of it is that all this stuff happens, and how do people find out about it? And that's hopefully what we're here for.
There you go, Allison.
Did
jump
that
in the
work
mix
with
here.
I don't have a monitor,
What was
so I
gonna
can't
say
see
about
which way I'm
that?
pointing.
It's kind of funny too with the Dillon rule, because I think people think about big things, but really, I mean, I wrote, a couple years ago now, about Albemarle getting some things that they had asked for from the state, and they were the ability to require people on certain types of streets to shovel their sidewalks,
That's
which is like
exactly
what the
right.
city does already, and the ability to, I think, ban parking on certain types of streets as well. Neither of those have been implemented yet, but they had to get approval from the state to do that, which is things that I think a lot of people who move here, which is nearly everyone from outside of Virginia
Why
at
can't
this
I do
point,
that?
I feel like don't understand that that's something that at a certain level, depending on if you're in a city or county,
Well, that's
whatever,
an
needs
important distinction,
state
right?
approval.
Because the county of Albemarle really has to go back to the state. The city, on the other hand, it has the right to do that because of the rules that it's structured.
And I don't know if that was a city thing first, because
Oh.
that's what a lot of this really is, especially with Albemarle and a lot of their asks. Obviously, they have some more rural asks, but a lot of their stuff is becoming, they say, more urbanized, and
Sure.
it's like a cross between urban and suburban. I wouldn't necessarily say suburban, but becoming, I guess, more developed, and they need some of the city things. I actually came across I didn't know this until last night. In the late 60s and in 1970 was the vote for the city and the county to become one. They would have been one city, which would have been very fascinating, but it
In the
did not
60s.
pass.
It did
Yes,
not pass.
in March 3rd, 1970 was the vote, and the county residents said no thanks. But it's the little things that are always kind of amusing, because I think people, don't really realize that that's not something that the county can just arbitrarily require. They needed to get state permission to tell people to shovel their sidewalks.
Let's acknowledge some of the viewers here first.
Oh, sure.
I know you have something to say. Dan Pettit says the mustache wax works. Sean Tubbs,
It does,
he's a
actually.
big proponent of
Head to the
that.
points.
Dan Pettit also says, I think most people in Crozet do not want to pay more taxes. I cannot see in any way to make it a town within the next 40 years. Too much division in people's thinking. I have multiple comments like that coming on the feed. He continues, people don't like some rules just like they don't like HOAs. Why are they going to go forward with becoming a town? Nicholas Erpy, CMO, Emergent Financial Services. Am I hearing Allison and Sean appreciating the rule as something that creates a set of rules that Virginians can be consistent with throughout state, or if it slows down local government's ability to react to issues? I'm curious to hear Keith and Jerry's thoughts on this too. That's Nicholas Erpy of Emergent Financial
That's a
Services.
great question.
Yeah.
So Nicholas is asking, is the Dillon rule slowing things down to the local?
And the
local
answer
to-
is hell yes.
Hell yes.
Absolutely.
I'm not so
Yes.
sure.
Yes.
I'm not so sure. It depends on who's in power at what point. Just in case, the example I was going to use, good segue, is the county's ability now to adopt a cigarette tax. Again, under Republican administrations, they would have blocked that, and that bill would never have gotten through.
So all the money would have went to the state.
And now counties can ask for that power, and right now there's the formation of the Regional Cigarette Tax Board. It's just an example. So in other words, your legislators have to be in sync with what your localities want. And with so many different jurisdictions and municipalities, it becomes noisy. So I think with better coordination and with better public involvement and understanding, I think it could be good. It's just, but again, for years we've had a legislature that only met 45 days out of the year. That's it. And we have a state of about 8.5 million people. Maybe we need to be betterly governed. Betterly?
Govern better.
Govern better, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm a writer, not a speaker.
You still got a little left there, buddy.
I would say the Dillon rule
pacing.
creates a much slower process and really strips our autonomy away from local government. I mean, if you're a local government here, there's one hand is tied behind your back on some of the decision making you can do, and
So-
it's because of the Dillon rule. And take it a step further. Imagine, for the sake of a talk show, if Philip Hamilton gets elected to the state legislature. I think Sally Hudson's going to win in a landslide, but just for the sake of a talk show, if Philip Hamilton gets elected to Richmond, this guy is pro statues in the city of Charlottesville, when the majority of this jurisdiction
Said no.
says hell no to that. I mean, have we thought about that?
I think you've answered your own question, because there's no way he would have gotten
He won't
elected.
get
here.
elected, but
Or-
I'm just, I'm talking first.
but again,
So let me go back to the Dillon rule and simplify it a little bit, and answer Nicholas's question a little bit more directly. Everything you start to ask a local jurisdiction, the first thing out of their mouth is, we need to check if it complies with the Dillon rule. And something as simple, it took me about a year and a half to get the Route 76 bike route changed through the town of Palmyra because it was a traffic hazard. And the first thing out of their mouth, this was pure public safety, was the right thing to do. Everybody was on board. We need to check with the Dillon rule to make sure we have the authority.
Well, in that case,
do
it's a little
this.
different because you don't run your own roads. VDOT runs your roads, so you
The
have
point
to go
I'm trying to
through
make,
that.
Sean, is even a simple thing like, hey, let's just move a bike route.
Changing things fast can have unintended consequences, and I think that's the concern that many have.
So that's why you think the Dillon rule.
I don't really have an opinion one way or the other. I'm just describing the process, and the process is if you can harness your legislators with, so right now, for instance, going back to the climate change thing, there's one supervisor who doesn't quite understand where things go. There's a lack of cohesion behind these things. It depends,
Remember,
again, on
no
what we want.
No pointing fingers, Sean.
Huh?
No pointing fingers.
Oh, I'm trying to I don't have where I'm pointing to here.
Right there, buddy.
Okay. Well, I know that part. I'm going to do my
You're walking
peace
the line
exercise.
well. Tom Chapman, Albemarle Historical Society. Welcome to the show, Allison.
Cheers, Tom.
I'm curious of what's in that brain of yours. Jump in here, please.
I will say it is interesting too, and kind of going off what Sean said a little, I will say government moves very slowly.
Sure.
But I think to some extent that does benefit some people, because I think sometimes government wants to be quick to react to very specific things. I think there was even an ask of something, so they're talking about their legislative priorities in Albemarle County right now, and they still haven't made final decisions yet, but one of the things that was proposed was there was an issue up in, I don't remember what part of the county, but somewhere in the North 29 area where the person's, oh gosh, I'm going to get this really wrong, but the person's either internet or water was struck with
Backhoe.
yes, a construction.
Heavy equipment.
Heavy
Yes.
equipment, yes,
There
thank you. And they were held responsible for it. And the contractor for the company was like, that's not our fault, not our problem, whatever. And so can the state at some point make people who mess things up like that required to fix it if it's not their
Actually,
problem?
there is. It's you're supposed to call before you dig.
Yeah.
It's called
Yeah.
411. Miss Utility.
Yeah.
411. That you have to come out and mark it, and if you don't go out and mark it, you're responsible to fix it. If they mark it and you hit it, then the state's responsible, the jurisdiction's responsible, or the utility's responsible,
See, this
or the
wasn't a
person
great
who
example.
the person who marked it.
But for some reason, this family could not get it resolved. I don't know
Yeah.
what it ended up being. But I will say that the board decided to not move forward with that as a priority of sorts at this point because it was really a focused issue. So I think sometimes I think sometimes government is quick to.
But they don't have control over that.
No.
Right?
And that's maybe not a great example. I think sometimes, though, government can be quick to want to target
Sure.
very specific things that only happen to a handful of people, where it could maybe have unintended consequences for the greater population if it became a law. And so, in a way, I think getting state approval can help. I will also maybe add that I don't know if. And not to say anything about elected officials locally, but I think it is hard to get buy-in from the state
We don't do that on the show.
at large
No pointing fingers.
no. But I think it's hard to get buy-in for very specific things that Albemarle or Charlottesville want to do.
Well,
If I could throw in just one quick thing, a second one, if that's all right. There was a second one the supervisors opted not to proceed with, and that was asking for state permission to dedicate a portion of the recordation tax to affordable housing.
Yeah.
And they basically essentially said, well, we actually don't have to ask for permission. So in that case, I could definitely grant you that that might slow down what the county can already do. Perhaps there's an idea of
It's the
ask
Sean
for
Tubbs I
forgiveness,
love.
but perhaps ask for forgiveness later. Do it first and ask for forgiveness later. That can sometimes you get you in trouble, but again, the cohesion between state and local government is really crucial.
So the negative side of this is they're constantly thinking, what can I do, what can't I do, right? And they can't. It slows down the positive or negative, and unintended consequences happens all the time.
Yeah, and
on-
like initial decision
on
making
that
is
stuff. But
a little slower.
I do want to give a shout out to all the elected officials and
You got two supervisors watching right
And
now.
we're-
You also have Matt Lawless, town manager
Oh,
of
yeah.
Scottsville, watching
we
right
love
now.
Matt.
Matt.
Matt's
Steve
a rock
Harvey,
star.
who's running for board of supervisors, watching
Steve,
right
hey Steve. So I will take this because I've been doing this for 3 decades. Allison and you guys watch me on the other side of a table. I've been doing it for a long time. I've never met an elected official that didn't put their whole heart into what they do, regardless. And I mean this intently. I
I'm
really,
with Jerry on this one.
I really do.
I think
Not
it's an
naming names.
incredibly hard job.
It is
and
incredibly
every
hard
meeting
job.
I sit at, I am so thankful I do not have to be making any of these decisions.
This is not what they do for a living, right?
yeah, right.
It
On
takes
top of all
it takes
that,
40
too.
hours to do it. Jerry's going to find out about this one day. It's a ton of work to do it, and we may differ with them on opinion and process, but I've been doing this for 35 years, and everybody I've dealt with the exception of 1 or 2, always treat you with respect and try to answer the question the best you can. That's just been my experience for 35 years.
Let's acknowledge.
Jerry thinks differently, I
Some
can
of the
see.
comments come. I mean, I think some elected officials do it better than others. and
That's true. That's
Allocate
true.
more time than others.
That's true.
Matt
That's true.
Lawless, good discussion. Thank you all for bringing this up. Steve Harvey has got really good props for you. He says, Jerry, you have the only honest journalist in the area on the show today. And Allison,
I'm a known liar.
I then asked him, are you referencing Allie Wrabel or Sean Tubbs? And he said, yes, Allie Wrabel. Earl Smith,
Nice.
the Maverick, is watching the program. Steve Harvey said, Allison Wrabel. Do you like Allison or Allie?
Either one is fine.
Okay, he said Allie just made an excellent point regarding legislating on problems that affect very few, creating regulations that will restrict the actions of thousands. Well said, Allie. Albemarle is constantly falling into these traps. Nicholas Erpy says, Maverick, Earl Smith, you are the man. Earl Smith, you are the man. DP says government reacts when they are sometimes forced to react, not generally proactive kind of government. Sean Tubbs, Bill McKenzie, the majority, regarding the majority on statutes, it was never put to a vote to the citizens, no referendum to prove that in fact a majority approved. There should have been a vote with the city and include county citizens as well because of revenue sharing. Bill McKenzie, thank you for going that. The revenue sharing agreement was struck in 1982, yet continues to come up to this day. How often
all the
do you
time.
hear about the revenue sharing agreement?
It's interesting. I feel like it comes in cycles. Like when people really, I don't know what it is, but there'll be something that they start paying attention to, and then they're like, "Wait, I live in the county, and we're paying the city money, and we don't have to be." And there's always the question of, and I even saw this. Someone mentioned this the other day somewhere. But could they allow annexation again in the near future? And I don't know if that's even a thing on the table anywhere. But it is a very interesting situation that people, I think when they come, I think it's like another one of those things too, when people move here from elsewhere, the whole city-county thing is a little weird for them. And they don't realize that they are two very separate but intertwined in a lot of ways jurisdictions, and I think it it makes sense when it was enacted, and I think Albemarle would be, I mean, what would Albemarle even be without its growth area to some extent? Oh
Without
gosh, that
Route
sounds
29?
a little
Be nothing.
bad, but there would be a lot less money for services that I think a lot of people overall in the county, no matter where you live, benefit from. Obviously, like fire rescue is the biggest one that I think people everywhere can agree you want them to show up when you need them. As we're seeing, because of changes in how society is, there are less volunteers. Volunteers are aging out. I've heard from volunteer station chiefs that people are way more willing, especially around here, to give money instead of time. And they really need your time. They need you to put out fires. So I think with the revenue sharing agreement aspect of things, it's interesting how I think a lot of people who live in the county tend to pay attention to the city a little more than they would if there wasn't that exchange of money. But I also think that if they hadn't had it in place and the city had annexed more of the land, the county wouldn't be what it is today.
So we deal with folks quite often in our business. What we do, coming from outside the area, in north of Northern Virginia, and one of the struggles that they tend to have is the separation between the school boards and the board of supervisors. They don't understand that, and it's, believe it or not, we spend a lot of time talking about that to understand that, well, your tax dollars are going here, but this board actually, all it does is gives the board of supervisors, give the money to the school board, and the school board determines how to spend it, and it's very confusing to them. To go back to the fire department thing, I'm going to be part of a ceremony tomorrow for the 20th anniversary of 9/11 at Lake Monticello Fire Department. My father used to be the chief, the current chief. Both of them are New York City firemen. The average age of those guys are out there are way older than me.
80 plus.
And they're desperately in need of people to help. So if you've got the time, please, they'll train you.
But at the same time, be cautious, because there is a professionalization happening and increased requirements, which is also part of the issue with people not volunteering. It's not that people don't want to volunteer. It's just that these days they have to have more certification to meet.
Well, I have a little experience with that. My wife and I advance life support.
Yeah. And so you're seeing that. So one of the things that happened at the council meeting the other day, of course, is a change that about how our ambulances are dispatched, which we won't get into now. But of course, these are the issues of government. And I think, and paying for it, paid firefighters and rescue people cost a heck of a lot more.
But at the moment, most of these have volunteers, and they're in desperate need of volunteers. And this is the shout out that we want to give at the moment.
A lot of the rural stations.
Money is great, right? If you can't volunteer your time, money is great. But they're desperately in need of somebody to show up to that accident and help you.
I want to we're going to create a little more on point. Reel this in a little bit here.
I better drink.
So
Cheers.
We're going to talk Scottsville. We want to talk school buses. Earl Smith is a school bus driver in Albemarle County.
Ooh.
You've covered this.
Have I covered? I mean, I got to test drive a school bus. That was pretty fun.
We have a tremendous shortage of drivers
Oh, yeah.
of Albemarle County. He is one of them. He makes this point: one way to save money is to stop striving to be number one all the time. It does not hurt to allow someone else to be the beta tester and then come in at second or third when you can buy into the idea at half of the cost. I also mentioned to him that we would bring up the school bus topic. Any insights that either of you that want to offer with the shortage in the city and the county on school bus drivers?
I will just say, doesn't quite address it, but we have multiple transit agencies competing for a talent pool that is increasingly smaller. Some of them pay a lot more than others. Yeah. I don't think that the county has matched the bonus that the city is providing. Mm-hmm. I think
I think they did.
They did.
I think slightly higher.
There's a $200 difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that I think those are the issues. Again, it gets back to, would it be more efficient to have one transit group? I mean, I'm just saying these are the ideas that the citizenry will talk about or say not happen. But I think that some of it also is, are those routes run efficiently? Keep in mind that there is a county school right in the middle of the city of Charlottesville.
Right. Yep. Jesus. So you're basically saying consolidate to one?
I'm saying it's an idea. I'm not saying to do anything.
It's not a bad idea.
Sean's all about the regionalism, which I always appreciate, because I think that there are things that there is a lot of duplicative efforts in this
Duplication.
community. Yeah.
Business, that's called vertical integration. That's what that's called. It's vertical integration.
I'm going to need a chalkboard to write down all these. Who was that guy who asked that tough question? I needed to parse that sentence. It was a
Nicholas
good one. I
Murphy.
can't wait to go back and read that
Well,
one.
we will bring in whiteboards next time.
Catherine Knott,
Whiteboards.
your colleague, has a comment.
Ooh, what
Oh.
is Catherine
Should
saying?
we give Catherine Knott for you?
Yeah, give her
To
some
Catherine!
claps. To Catherine, the
Albemarle
best schools
County is
reporter
doing
we've
a
had.
$2,500 bonus for new and current bus drivers. They
Got
are
it.
currently
Got
down
it.
to 18 drivers.
Wow.
Catherine Knott, you have great coverage in the newspaper. You guys really have a really, really good core.
Thank you.
I've been
We try
there.
hard.
I have been there. I respect the hell out of what you guys are doing. Jesus,
Thank
I
you.
respect the hell out of what you guys are doing. Jump in here.
So I want to go back to towns
Mm-hmm.
and Scottsville in particular. Is Matt still watching?
Yes, Matt Lawless is still watching.
So Matt, first of all, love you doing great work out there. What is your pitfalls, right? What are your struggles in a township to kind of get that out there? What is the positives and the negatives? Just a couple bullet points if he can chime in on that.
We
while-
also
while
got the
we're talking.
former mayor of Scottsville, Nancy Gill.
Same thing from the mayor.
Hi, Nancy.
Watching
What's the positive? What's the negatives from
And-
their
I mean, I
perspective?
would think Scottsville is unique in a way that it's always been a town kind of a thing. I mean, not always, but for all of our lifetimes has been a town. So there hasn't really been this question of should they have self-control kind of a thing of some of what they do. I think what Scottsville has really struggled with is getting the relationship with the county that they want. I think a lot of residents, and I know some supervisors might want to disagree with me on this to some extent, but I think there is a feel of neglect in Southern Albemarle and Scottsville a little bit. I think a little less so since they do have their own governance. People do feel like they have someone to kind of go complain to who will likely listen to them. But I also think that a lot of people in Southern Albemarle kind of feel like Scottsville, like that's like where their
So
connection
I could put a little
is.
historical context to that. I've been here since '87. My wife worked in Schuyler for a few years, running the U.S. and Canadian operations for a Finnish company for the soapstone facility out there. So we used to go through Scottsville twice a day. We were in there almost every weekend. From my perspective, from a historical perspective, it is an unbelievably done a 180 from the 80s until now. It's a great little town. My wife and I go there on the weekend all the time to go have a burger or a beer or go sit on the river or do some of the tubing down there on the stuff. But they, under Matt and certain leadership,
yeah.
it's really, and folks just need to go there. It's a lot of fun.
It's so great about people in Scottsville, and a lot of the elected officials there are like so about Scottsville,
oh
and
my
it's
gosh.
great. And yes, they're always like, come down here, like come see what we're doing.
You'll never regret it.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's a great town, and I like saying it because it is a town.
And a reason that it's there too is, keep in mind about historical investments in infrastructure. Scottsville wouldn't be there without the investment in is it levee or levy?
Levy.
Okay, I can't. That's one of those English American things I got mixed up. The town of
Happy
Columbia.
birthday, Pam.
The town of Columbia did not have that investment, so repeated floods.
Sure.
That's
very good point.
That's a reason why. And who did I get that from? Matt Lawless when I interviewed him in late July. Something you can listen to on Charlottesville Community Engagement.
Well,
It's a good piece. I'll put a link later. But no,
This
I
is
think
why you
it's
should be streaming
But
to
it
your
is those
Facebook page.
investments. I'll just say this, like Sperryville, for instance.
Well done, sir.
But that can have a double-edged sword. So Sperryville, up in Madison County, I think it's a town, and of course they are experiencing major growth issues at the moment because they had an investment in an urban water supply, an urban sewage, which allows them to put more people there. And now it's become a destination. When you invest in an area, people are going to want to go there or not, and then you want. So that's I'll just throw that out there.
I mean,
Well,
in Scottsville,
151 proved that.
a great thing
Yeah,
about Scottsville is they have a lot of water. They have a lot of water.
Yeah.
So one of
I hear that a lot.
one of our business colleagues, Andre Xavier, who's enjoying or celebrating the grand opening of Patch Brewery in Gordonsville
Yep.
here.
Hey.
He is the co-owner of CVille Hop on Tours with John Craig. He is actually driving students to and from the field school.
Huh.
So it's the privatization of school bus driving because there's not enough school bus drivers out there.
Did not know that.
That is literally happening now. There's an entrepreneur who launched a business in Richmond, a retired school bus driver who bought 4 minivans and has created the privatization of school bus driving in Richmond. And a lot of folks are commenting on this topic. Earl Smith, a stakeholder in Scottsville, who ran for the Board of Supervisors after Chris Dumler got the boot for a number of reasons, all of them gross. We won't go down that road.
We will not.
Earl Smith says Albemarle County Public Schools do not pay accordingly to what a CDL license holder in the state gets paid. Starting pay for a CDL B starts at 19 bones an hour. Albemarle County, I added bones. Albemarle County will say, we pay more than the other school systems, and that's why you have a shortage of bus drivers. It's been that way for more than 10 years, always short 10 to 12 drivers per year.
Yeah.
If you were actually competitive towards the average pay scale for a CDL license holder, I don't think you'd have any trouble attaining drivers.
You would not, and it's usually retirees, right? Or retired school teachers. I have a couple of one of my neighbors that's what they do. And it fits their schedule, right? They can drive in the morning, go play golf, and pick up in the afternoon. And
Is anybody really doing that though?
I have 1, 2, 3.
Playing the golf? I mean, you know.
Oh, no, golf?
Because like when you play golf, don't you want to relax? You don't have to go back to work.
These people are passionate about golf, so they
Yeah,
play
that
golf
makes
every.
sense. That makes
they
sense.
play golf every day. I'm not a golfer, but they play golf every day. And I
Goofer.
thought we were going to go down the whole COVID golf thing, but I didn't. Think,
Anyway, sorry to interrupt.
no, it's quite all right. Anything on the feed, sir?
Yes, quite a bit on the feed. First, I want to get Allison Wrabel in the mix. Anything that you'd like to add to any of the conversations we're having?
I mean, going back a little bit to the positives and negatives of a town, I mean, I think Scottsville, it's interesting in general because I listened to the Planning Commission meeting that they had earlier this week about some potential growth happening down there. That they had rezoned some land next to the tire factory for, or changed the cluster development rules.
By the tire plant?
Yes.
Correct, yeah.
And it's technically, I guess, part of the property. It's a separate property, but it's vacant land. And they have an application for 48 homes on that site. And I think they're still in the process, are probably gonna, I think did approve holding a public hearing in October, but still wanting more traffic information, still wanting more environmental stormwater information, as the Planning Commission had said. But it's definitely a community that wants to be involved with the county, and I think Matt's been advocating for more inclusion, and even the town council at a joint meeting that they had. Oh gosh, I don't even know time. What is time?
October?
A year ago?
I think that was maybe last
Almost?
October, I think.
Wow.
Matt's attended almost every one of my regional housing planning district committees.
And I
He's
believe
really-
you
he's really
announced
good.
the speaker series begins in October, didn't you?
We did. We're starting in October.
I think so. I think you did.
Presented
Some-
by Shenandoah Joe's.
some
Dave
great
Farah
stuff
and
coming up.
Shenandoah Joe's on Crescent.
Oh no, we're talking two different things. We're talking the Regional Housing Partnership Speaker Series. What we're talking about, we'll pitch at the end of the show. But
Secret.
Secret though. End of the show. We've got a new series coming up starting next Friday.
We're going to
Actually,
have all the candidates on this network here.
we're gonna now's a good time as anything. We're calling a coffee with the candidates, and we're gonna bring them 2-on-2 in here through all the rest of September and October. And Shenandoah Joe is gonna power it. And
Now, we've discussed this before on previous shows, so what I understand you're going to do is you're having even the uncontested seats. That's
correct.
Those folks are coming in.
That's really the focus. It's a focus on everybody, but the uncontested seats, we just want to, hey, so what's your position on this? And it's real estate, so we're going to focus on housing, of course, and focus on that.
Are you going down as deep as school board, or just at the supervisor level?
At the moment, there's not a lot of Fridays.
Could get Dooley, Emily Dooley.
We could get Emily Dooley and that stuff. Look, I was trying to do an independent roundtable with the independent city council, but we apparently have one less candidate now. So maybe Emily can step in and do it with that. But it's a moving target. But we're focusing on the boards and the councils at the moment. And if I got some openings, we'll do
curious.
some in that.
If I could just say one last thing about Scottsville, I think that, and I can do this in 15 seconds, the biggest barrier to Scottsville's expansive growth is Route 20. A road that is likely never going to be expanded past that without a lot of money that somebody's going to have to pay for and get approved.
So I'll counter-argue that
15
a little
seconds
bit.
exactly, Sean.
the advent of work at home has changed that dynamics quite a bit. Now, and Matt can answer this. I can't remember if Scottsville has high-speed internet or broadband at the moment, but I think they do.
It's on the way regardless, probably.
Steve Harvey says, if the unopposed don't have anybody to debate with, I'm happy to offer my services. Steve Harvey running for the White House.
Steve Harvey.
I appreciate your
in
hustle and
2023.
chutzpah,
So Steve Harvey, you're on my call list. I just haven't gotten there yet.
Steve Harvey, you are always welcome on this network, sir. I would say the two challenges with Scottsville are not only Route 20, but the density of people needed to support an economic ecosystem in Scottsville. We don't have the density yet to support an economic ecosystem.
So and Matt can answer this much better than I can, but tourism is going to make the difference there, right? You're only going to put so many bodies in there to pay the taxes. The rest of it has to come from Keith and Yonna Smith going to the brewery or going to eat dinner. Excuse me. Mm-hmm. I used to love to go to the old original Dewdrop Inn, which those who ever watch Waltons, that used to actually be there. But yeah, it's tourism will be it.
Well, to throw it back to tourism for a second, I think all of Southern County, Schuyler, you mentioned the soapstone factory earlier. Those are gems waiting to be told to people who live here who don't know the history of that area. Esmond, for instance, and the work that
they can read the book.
Yeah, that I'm blanking on the name right
I wrote
now.
about in December. Friends of Esmond?
That's the one. Peggy, what's her last name?
Oh, gosh.
So I'm going to say to you, Schuyler at one point in time in the 18 and early 1900s was a very bustling city.
What's Schuyler most known for today?
What's
legal now in the state of Virginia?
It's legal. You can say that.
It's legal.
But I would say, going back to England, in England, every time I go to England and I say where I'm from, they identify it with the Waltons.
Yeah.
So I think having the Waltons Museum, having that bed and breakfast that they built there, those little things, how can you get entrepreneurs and encourage them to figure out how to do this? And then how do you get I think where there's regulation, some might say that, well, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going there. I'm definitely not going there.
I'm glad you're not
shut
going
up
there.
now. Zip it.
Uh-oh.
See ya.
Is that even possible?
What's that? No.
It's not possible.
I would love.
Did you sing last night?
I would love to see Scottsville. Just a suggestion, you guys, Matt, you're a pro. Everyone I speak to about you, Matt, absolutely loves you as a town manager. This comment came up in our Scottsville roundtable with Earl Smith, Eric LaFontaine, and Nancy Gill. Why Scottsville does not have its own little board of tourism. Charlottesville and Albemarle County have the CACVB. I don't want to go down the road of the CACVB.
I didn't want to go there either. That's what I was not going down.
On the CACVB. But Scottsville has so much beauty and so much to offer. Why is there not 4, 5, 6 people committed strictly to driving tourism?
Well, that's purely a Matt question.
That's a Matt question.
But I suspect it's a lot to do with dollars, right? That costs money to do that. Right.
Involvement.
But there are
not to say that there aren't people who want to be promoting the community. I feel like they have a
well, we're promoting it now.
Arts and recreation committee.
That's SCAN or whatever it's called.
Or that even.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot happening there. We just don't get around to it that often. I guess.
But in order to promote that, and Jerry knows this better than anybody, it's a process to do that, and it involves time.
But you don't necessarily need a board to do it. An example is
the CACVB.
Well, but you don't need that board necessarily to do that when there are other grants. And this maybe gets us back to our earlier conversation about this. So there's the Virginia Tourism Corporation, and I believe that right now there is a plan. The IX, all of the arts organizations in downtown Charlottesville have gotten together for this Discover Charlottesville series. Mm-hmm. Are you aware of this? Mm-hmm. I believe all of that marketing is paid for with a $20,000 grant, and I believe the folks at the IX part mostly put that together. So if you're sufficiently motivated to do it, apply for a grant. I mean, that's what I think sometimes. Well, no, I'm not going. I'm not talking about the CACB.
So, Allison, I'm looking at
Scared.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 articles that you wrote
over there?
in the last couple of days.
The metrics here.
Oh yeah, that you written in the last few days. So, anything that you written in the last few days you'd like to really talk about?
God, what have
that
I
you think
written
is
in the last
that
few
folks need
days?
to really know about?
How about uncontested elections?
There was. Yeah, I haven't written actually a lot about the elections recently, mostly because they are uncontested and 2 of them are incumbents.
Well, that would be considered uncontested, right? Still.
Yeah.
But there is one, I guess, newcomer.
Should I say it?
Say
Are you ready for this?
Oh, gosh.
Should I say it?
I don't know what you say.
It's 3 words.
Is it a
Starts
new
with an
write-in?
F. It's a structure in Albemarle County.
Huh?
Fashion Square Mall.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, that.
Oh, gosh.
Wait, the Fashion Square Mall is running for
Oh, I did actually write about-
supervisors?
You did?
I did write
I
about
know you did.
form-based code.
That's
Yeah, they
right.
approved their form-based code.
Yes, ma'am.
I knew
and
exactly where you were going
It
with that.
seemed like there are some. I mean, I haven't talked to a lot of property owners up there in really since the pandemic.
So, Allison, I'm going to slow you
started,
down for a
but
second.
Yes.
For those who do not know what form-based code
Oh,
is,
yes.
we probably ought to give a quick little
So
primer on
form-based
that.
code is where you are allowed to do development based more, I'm going to say this really wrong. I have a great sentence in my story that describes it, but more about
didn't print
the
that one.
design than the use, and the use is part of it, but it's mostly about making a form that's allowed under the form-based code.
So it's more optic.
Yes, and I think maybe Sean would like to chime in here. Some street trees and roads that are
it's about-
pedestrian friendly.
It's about building a place, and I think that when this whole was kicked off in April of 2019 or so, the county actually invited folks from Virginia Beach, Alexandria, and Leesburg to come and give examples. No, I'm sorry, not Alexandria. Arlington Boulevard. No, was it Arlington Boulevard? Arlington, Clarendon. Wait, what's that? Columbia Pike, I'm sorry. So in theory, the idea is basically to go ahead and approve what the form would be, so like more of a denser city.
call them back.
And that would mean that developers could come in and not have to go through the rezoning process for that. Of course, and the answer gets down to this, and channeling my inner Neil Williamson, the question is, will the government actually give up that control, even with the form-based zoning? Because there's going to be pressure from community advisory groups to no matter what happens, to put pressure on shrinking it or whatever. So we'll see what happened. It's important to go back that a lot of the energy about the form-based code was coming from a time when the county was considering moving some of its office space up that way, something that's currently on hold.
So the best way I explain it, it's kind of an overlay, right? An overlay is a bad word to use in planning, but there's a drawing of what we want this to look like, right? And it hovers over the top of the land, and Sean and Allison come in and say, we're going to do
Well,
exactly...
it's not me. No, I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not a
For
developer.
the sake of a talk show, all right, Allison...
Gotta be accurate.
It's okay, Allison, because Allison will play with me, right? We'll just drop down, and as long as you meet all this criteria, it kind of drops down, and it moves the process a little bit faster through it. And that's kind of the intent of it, is to move this faster instead of taking 6 or 12 or 8 years, whatever it is, to get to a rezoning. And I wrote, and at some point, if it's not this show but another show, I did a bunch of research on HOAs, but we'll talk about that maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
HOAs are very interesting.
We can talk
What's
HOAs.
your take on HOAs, Allison?
Oh, thank
I
you.
don't know.
Thank you for playing,
I'm just
Allison.
fascinated
I'm all
by
excited
them.
now.
I think it's interesting because I live in the city, so there's not many HOAs in the city, very few.
4.
And the county is a lot of HOAs. So I hear little things people say, and I think it's funny because it really kind of came to my attention a little more when they were talking about homestays, Airbnb kind of stuff, because they were, I think people were not, I guess, we're just a little confused. One gentleman had set up an Airbnb and had gone through the whole county process, and then his HOA was like, you can't do that. So it's like the county doesn't supersede the HOA, so you have to check on your own stuff a little
This
bit.
reminds me of the discussion we've had about how HOA neighborhoods are going to go incrementally up in value.
That's
if
exactly
this
right.
Upzoning happens in the city of Charlottesville.
So this ties into a little bit of the Dillon rule and zoning ordinances. So what most folks do not know, so the county of Albemarle, we'll leave the city out, some of the other jurisdictions, Flavanna I know very well, actually have got the county ordinance here for Flavanna County. If you do anything over a minor subdivision, which is most jurisdictions it's 5 or 6 lots, right? And you go into what's called a major subdivision. So there's 2 sides of the table here. There's a zoning ordinance, and there's chapters that are 500-600 pages long, and then there's the site plan or the subdivision ordinance, which is another 500 or 600 pages. To make a long story short, when you start going into major subdivisions, which is more than 5 or 6, you're going to have an HOA. The ordinance makes you have a homeowners association. And why is that? Why, I know the answer. Why do you think that is, Sean?
Oh, it's to regulate the private infrastructure. Someone's got to pay for the private infrastructure.
Well, it's not even paid for.
Well, and to continue to maintain it.
And maintain it.
Yeah.
That's exactly it.
And so you see this in areas, even just with examples of subdivisions that have been created by dams, and that they're dams. Someone has to pay for that dam. So, those are the questions.
Oh, yeah.
Who is going to pay for all of this stuff? And of course, this came up in Charlottesville with a rezoning that actually was ultimately defeated on that one. Sorry, because the question is, who's going to pay for that?
That's why I think this upzoning thing, and this is something that's flying under the radar, except for Real Talk.
Yep.
That if the upzoning happens in the city of Charlottesville and additional density is created in the city, you will see HOA neighborhoods that are near the urban ring boom in value.
Well, it's already happened.
Well, you're already seeing that.
I mean,
It's already
even more. Wait till you add triplexes, quadplexes,
cheapers.
duplexes in the city of Charlottesville.
I can't give specifics, obviously, but it's a transaction that we're doing out at Lake Monticello, and I'll leave the numbers out of it. But I had an appraiser call me to ask, so how do you feel about this number? And I gave this particular appraiser all the data and all that stuff. He goes, yeah, it's good, right? But this number's a high number, right, for Lake Monticello. And but
3?
Yeah, it's got a 3 in it. So far.
Jeebus.
Yeah. So the reality of it is, it's just important, and this came up on Tuesday on the show, it's just important to understand that, the developer's required to do this, right? They're required to do the HOA. And it's simple thing about erosion and control. Who maintains the retention basins? Because everybody understands this. Once the declarant, which is the developer, he or she are done, they're out. Somebody has to take care of all these facilities.
If you could
Private
send me that for
streets.
later, because I would love to do a comparison of what those rules are in all 6
So
jurisdictions.
let's work together on that. I'm serious about that.
No, because I'm very curious, so what you're saying, though, I don't think that exists in the city. That code does not exist in the city, because the city assumes that there will be more municipal ownership of the infrastructure,
City's
which would
an
be
exception to
represented.
that.
Yeah, that's.
So but I'm actually working, and a shout out to Shimp Engineering and Kelsey Schlein. They're helping me
the
with.
universal engineers.
Yeah.
They're everywhere.
Well,
He's got a great book of business.
but they're doing it on pro bono and helping me put a diagram. So we'll work together on it. And Allison, you're
curious.
welcome to join us if you'd like.
I'm interested in seeing the
But
results.
we're working on a table on how this actually works out for jurisdiction.
Mustache Dan Pettit, Southern Development had a Zoom meeting last night.
Yep.
How much will Southern have to pay, and how long will it take to get this area near Lake Monticello approved and started?
Oh, well, it's just the beginning. It's years, and it's hundreds and thousands of dollars to.
To go back to the city, Southern Development has now put up $2 million on the table for infrastructure improvements related to a rezoning at 240 Stribling that goes before the Planning Commission on Tuesday.
So to go back
Speaking of Stribling, Steve Harvey, great show today. Off to meet a client. Talk to you soon, Jerry. P.S. I'm hosting an open house today at 139 Stribling Avenue in Charlottesville. If anyone wants to come by, always be close.
Don't you love this show?
I do love
I love this show.
He's pimping his listings. I
So
love
so
that.
hey, how much? Tell me about it. Hold it. I might have a client. Hold on.
You got your digital business card?
I got my digital business. Hey, text me.
Steve Harvey, Keith Smith might have a client.
Text me. But to go back to the thank you, buddy. To go back, it's a coffee and the champagne's kicking in.
Hey!
Prost. So to go back to the Lake Monticello Southern Development thing, just to talk about the HOA scenario, it's a major subdivision in Fulvana County. If you have over 100 units or 40 units, whatever it is, you have to have certain amount of amenities, clubhouse, pool,
Oh, yeah.
tracks, all this stuff. You're required to build all this stuff, and there has to be an HOA to maintain it because the county doesn't want it, right?
Well, but also too, I mean, again, but let's flesh out why they don't want it. They don't want the burden of paying
don't
for
want
the
the
taxes.
responsibility.
But also too, you would argue that maybe their citizens also don't want to pay for the burden. You might have somebody say in one magisterial district saying, well, why should we pay for this?
Let's go back to Crozet and the
So it gets
township.
back again to governance. It gets back to that, to again, like how are we going to get through and manage to share this community and establish ground rules for these types of things and do it constructively?
So let's go back to Crozet in the township. I'm living in Old Trail. I'm paying dues there. You know, those dues are giving me certain features, right, that maybe a county or a town would already take care of. So I'm going to pay double or triple, frankly. It's just, I just wanted folks to understand that, you know, these HOAs are required. It's not like you can't not do them. There's not an option to say, oh, I don't want to do it. And the county goes, yeah, or the city, whatever it is, says, okay.
And sometimes those homeowners associations can put that money towards lobbying efforts, such as the Forest Lakes Community Association.
Nice pivot into next week.
I just got this email
which
about
states very clearly that they had put their money in towards fighting a development nearby.
Literally,
And their board of
literally,
directors,
look at this.
and their board of directors is full. Oh, John Kelly, look at that. And you know, there's a lot of money behind that the HOA is paying to fight
Amen.
other development.
So-
God,
which
Alice will
you
be
know,
on next week.
which is good for them, which is after September 15th is the public hearing for the RST development, which I believe, Allison, is how many units is that one now?
Oh God, I should have looked at this. Definitely more than 200.
And less than the 370 that it was initially, because it was
So while
shrank
Jerry's
back a bit.
fingers are doing
Dude, the feed is
magic,
blowing up.
doing magic here, back to this HOA. I've been living there since 1987. This is the first time that I got an email from the association about a development.
Interesting.
Right? Went out to 4,500 members. It didn't take a position. It just let everybody know that there was a meeting last night. Since 1987, I've never seen that happen. So, to your point, they
Yeah.
do. They're little governments, is what they are.
Well, and you know, I think that's it. And of course, they're required to have a board of directors. I think that it'd be interesting to see how those evolve. Maybe we don't need towns if you can have that. Maybe the different neighborhood associations. They have neighborhood associations.
Let's throw an
Crozet.
HOA
Old
question
Trails.
out there.
Well, there's one that just came in. This is from Earl Smith, and this one hits a little close to home here. This hits really close. The HOA at Glenmore would not allow me to canvass during my campaign, but allowed Rick Randolph access because he lived inside the gates. I also experienced stinky faces from the HOAs at Mill Creek and Lake Renovia. True story. Earl Smith.
Yeah.
Stinky
He
faces.
said stinky faces.
I'm gonna just.
Stinky faces. I like stinky faces. That's not bad, right?
I mean, I have stinky face.
Stinky
But
faces.
You have a gorgeous face. What are you
This
saying with those
Anything you
handlebars?
want to acknowledge on that?
It's not acknowledged. It goes back. It goes back to the last comment I made. Is these HOAs are little governments, right? And they have their own rules. They have their own regulations. And we talked about this before. And I caution clients when they go into an HOA. You know, they can foreclose on your property. They have unbelievable rights that are given to them by the state, because they act like little governments.
And, you know, just to channel again the Neil Williamson, the missing person here today, those community advisory committees. The question is, like, what are those? And, like, of course, Neil...
He's not a fan.
Neil is not a fan of those. And, of course, I am
Neither is
neutral
Rick.
on their existence. But I would say that those are organizations that, depending on... They don't have the same power.
Well, they don't have any power.
Well, but they have the rhetorical power and the power of
They
the
have
bully
perceived
pulpit.
power.
And they have perceived power. And I think that...
You got a couple watching.
Very
so
interesting
be
question.
Very careful.
No, I'm careful. I'm just saying that each of them act in different ways. And I think that some of them are more information. Like, it was good to hear, I think, that from your Lake Monticello example, of the importance of putting out neutral information is really crucial, because sometimes that's what people know. And
It was
and-
neutral. It was not
Yeah.
one-sided.
And I think that is, and I think going back to Forest Lakes, I think that a lot of the work they put together using some of their funds is not necessarily neutral, but it's constructive.
The opposite of neutral.
Well, but it's constructive. It raises.
say not agree with that?
It raises questions.
but
It's
is
like
that-
they're hiring a
Let's get Allie
consultant.
in
But Allison, is that put out by the association or
yeah.
by a group of people?
By the HOA.
It's actually by the HOA?
Oh, yeah. It was by the HOA.
Yeah, and I think, and I don't know. I mean, I don't know if they're voting on it as a point. I don't know how HOAs have boards, right?
They
And do
function just like a
do
government.
they get appointed?
They function just like a government.
Elected? I don't know. I think
They
elected,
do.
right? Yeah.
They
So
get
I don't know if
elected.
it's the board. I guess it mostly is the board doing it. From
So
what I
there
can
was a
tell.
formal action taken by the board Forest
They
Lakes.
use money from
It's
HOA
in-
coffers.
It's in their newsletter,
Got it.
Money
and
from
you know,
HOA
in their
coffers.
newsletter, they
Okay, well, then
they
it
allow
is.
that for public consumption,
Sure.
which is
And they hired consultants.
Yeah.
they
So
hired
the board
consultants
itself-
to do
Hired
it.
guns.
The board
Who
itself
are
took
also
action.
on yeah, I'm going to shut up now.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say.
I mean, John, for example, is a PR guy.
they live there, so it's kind of one of those things, and it's like
It's
but-
a little weird too what they've done with some of their stuff. I definitely need to look into this a little more before Wednesday. But the traffic study. So they argue that the developer's traffic study is not showing the full picture. But I think that the traffic study they uses single-family home traffic and not multifamily home traffic. And there's a little bit of a distinction. I did some research on this about multifamily home traffic depending on where it's located. And so there is no bus service currently to where RST is being proposed. But there is a plan and a process that's moving forward right now of looking at bus service along 29 and even 29 north, further north, looking at transportation options and different what kind of transit should be there. So that's not to say that there will never be transit there. But I think from what I've been able to tell that their study used single family homes, which I think it is it's not super intuitive to realize that people in multifamily homes, even if there's a lot of homes, like 200 and whatever is going to be proposed or is proposed for there, still likely will have less cars than that same number of single family homes because single-family homes just typically have more cars and more trips.
They typically have two vehicles versus one. That's usually the thinking on it. I can tell you not about traffic. I can talk to you specifically about water and sewer consumption, right? A townhome or a multifamily or an apartment, what VDH uses as their multiplier is substantially lower than single-family detached. Never quite understood why, but they actually have worked out the math that multifamily homes or multifamily apartments use less water and sewer. So I would think along the lines of the traffic is the same way.
I wonder if that's because of irrigation, the idea that those homes, there's nothing the water
I
outside.
think
Could
the
be
thinking
part of
is
it.
less people is my understanding of it.
But just to go back to that, just real quick about that, is that it's also, to answer a question from earlier in comprehensive plan, you asked what was
Sure.
comprehensive planning. In a lot of ways, remember that comprehensive planning also signals to developers
Sure.
where the community is going to invest in the infrastructure. And we've seen that. I believe that the comprehensive plan designation for the RST property is for urban residential density. But comprehensive plan is not the zoning, so
It's
that's
a
kind of where we.
non-obligatory document.
And I think that's kind of where the city of Charlottesville, I think that with the future land use map and the rezoning, we have that whole other section. And it's going to be
And I
So
interesting.
think
Neil and
going
I
on that
are
alone-
having this bet on
Scott Elliff. welcome to the
process.
broadcast.
Hey, Scott.
But on how long this is going to take in the city to get through the comprehensive plan to actual zoning. And I'm betting that it's not going to be in this coming electoral cycle. I may be wrong, but
I mean, they're scheduled to be done by the end of this calendar year with the
It's-
comprehensive plan update. But I think it is, going off that a little bit too, I think, the city is doing it different than what the county is proposing to do with their update. But I think it's important to note too that a comprehensive plan's future land use map or a master plan's future land use map, and those designations on there are not zoning.
No.
And a future land use map category can be a variety of zoning categories. So you can have something like the urban density residential in the county is a prime example. That is 6 to 34 units per acre, I think.
So an
and
interesting-
And it's zoned R1 currently.
So,
an interesting
yeah.
academic thing for the three of us or four of us to do is to take a look over the last 20 years, how many projects that were in the growth area that the comprehensive plan said would be there did not get approved. And I would imagine that number's probably higher than not. I suspect more got denied than got approved in that. But that'd be a real interesting thing to take a look at what that ratio is, because it's not common. It is common that
And
projects
Neil,
that get
I'm sure
rejected-
he's talked about it, but Neil did the white paper, I think is what
Yes.
he was calling it, where he looked at kind of the county has brought down a lot of development. So RSC is one of those examples. Depending on whether or not they approve it next week, but Breezy Hill is another one that went from however many.
Well, those were both
units
results of tie
to-
votes.
Oh yeah, no, but has come down in number of units.
Density, sure.
180 to
regularly.
80
Sure.
in the case of Breezy Hill.
Yeah. So and that is an interesting.
It's a
I
substantial
think
drop.
that there will be more of that than more denials. I
But
can't.
but that's the
I'm trying to even
process,
think of a.
An example, well, I think in some cases, remember there, but okay, so in 1980, the county did a comprehensive zoning. So they basically changed the zoning
Yeah.
across the entire places. And some areas came in at R4, which are actually lower than the designation in the comp plan. Places like Dunlore Forest, for instance, which is a fairly dense, by right, they didn't have to do anything except for submit a site plan, which is not an easy thing to do for lots of
is
other reasons.
not.
But they didn't have to go through that legislative process, which allows for the public to weigh in. And sometimes, whether it's an HOA or an advocacy organization, that opposition is targeted and it's on message. And because, it's all lobbying.
People want to chat Breezy Hill here.
Okay.
We want to chat Breezy
Sure.
Hill.
I mean, I think Breezy Hill is also unique in the fact that the master plan out there is wildly confusing depending on
Convoluted.
what page you're looking at. And the whole, I mean, if you look at all the other master plans in the county, I don't think any of them have the 6 road projects that need to be completed before new development,
Which is not legally applicable, but
Yeah,
people,
as county
but it's
staff.
morally applicable, and sometimes that's all that matters. It's what argument wins the day to get the votes, up or down. Sometimes it's a moral argument, and that's what happens sometimes.
What's the specific questions on Breezy Hill?
The updates on where we stand with Breezy Hill, how many units are coming, and what's next.
Yeah.
I
So
think it's gone to has it gone to the Board of Supervisors yet? I
No,
think that's next.
That's next, yeah. And I
Yeah.
think it's.
And I know that I didn't report on it, but I know that the Village of Rivanna Community Advisory Committee met, and they demanded that the city and that the county and VDOT meet with them to discuss their concerns, their
This-
further concerns.
This comment just came in. You need to sit in a scope meeting with VDOT to get their thinking on widening the roads or how they determine how roads are built in regards to Breezy Hill.
You can read any article that I've written or Allison's written about smart scale and about how projects work. And I think that you will see that the bigger projects don't happen, but the smaller projects, which probably don't answer your question, but VDOT's about moving traffic, not necessarily about, and you don't necessarily have to build wider roads to do that. But that's a public process, which of course,
Do you know that
it's what we write about.
the first smart scale project in the state of Virginia was in Fluvanna County? That roundabout was the
yes.
first one to get approved, and first one to get funded, and the first one actually to get built.
Meanwhile, the city of Charlottesville received 3 in that year, 3 studies, none of which has gone to construction yet.
Yeah.
Not that that's,
So
anything
back-
anybody cares about.
So back on Breezy Hill, I'll dig into that. That might be a good Tuesday show for us a little bit. I need to dig in. A little too close to home. Got it.
No, we can
Got
talk
it.
Breezy
No,
Hill.
got
I'm
it.
just
I
choosing
don't want to
words
make you
carefully.
uncomfortable.
No, please, let's talk Breezy Hill.
No,
I'm
we don't
completely
need.
comfortable
No, we
talking about Breezy
we don't
Hill.
need to do it today because I need to do a little bit more homework on it.
We
to
can
talk
talk
about.
Breezy Hill.
We'll pick it
Well,
for another
what
What
day.
other
If I could
articles
just,
do you have over
yeah,
there
oh yeah,
now?
yeah, do that. That's better than
Do
what I
the
was gonna say.
articles I
Well,
got.
how
Well,
about some of the comments?
Yeah, sure.
People
And
asking
that
for
too.
storylines to cover. So Earl has this for Allison and Sean. Here's another idea. Why is there an effort towards younger family homes instead of retirement homes in communities? Families bring more traffic, overburden the school system, etc. Retirement communities bring money for services and businesses and don't burden the school system and other infrastructure. Thoughts for Sean and Allie?
There is a rezoning on Park Street for 50 affordable homes that the Piedmont Housing Alliance is putting
Yep.
forward now. So there's lots of different markets and lots of different ways to get to
And
them.
what Brook Hill has the, I guess, I don't know if it's assisted or
The
like
senior center?
senior apartments or
Yeah.
whatever it is that are going in up there. And it's interesting too because I a few years ago started to look at the increase in the population over 65 versus the increase in population under 18, and over 65 is increasing, I think, at slightly a faster rate than, or was. I haven't looked at this in, gosh, a couple years now, but it is an interesting, and then I think we do already naturally attract a lot of retirees and people who have money and can buy a lot
Realtor
of.
magazine.
Go ahead, you do
There we
it. You go do it.
Realtor
You do it.
magazine called Charlottesville the #2 retirement community, or the #2 place to move in the country for baby boomers.
That was in 2020.
Yeah.
Waynesboro
Wow.
is number
Number
3.
three.
So the entire nation, Realtor
Interesting.
magazine called Charlottesville metro area the #2 most popular spot in the nation for
The
retirees
way they
and baby
did-
boomers.
What was?
The way they determined that is
Yeah.
there's a moving app you can have, like
Yeah.
Orbits, and that's where all the traffic is
Isn't that
going.
Boylan Heights now?
Boiling Heights. So you
I had to
asked
do
about
that. Had to
articles
do
I have
that.
in front of me,
Yeah,
which
yeah. Well, what
I
were
did
you-
some
what was
ferocious. Oh, look at you!
you
Look at
interested
it may be a little bit geeky, but I was really intrigued by the article you wrote that came out at 0:30 this morning about the Virginia Outdoor Foundation and conservation easements. It's a real estate show. It might be a little bit too geeky for folks that are listening out there, but I think it's important we're representing buyers to understand what a conservation easement is. We explain it to our client, but why don't you, Allison, take a high level.
Yeah, so
stab
I
at
mean,
it.
especially in Albemarle County, I mean, I think it is one of the most, or has
the most, it does.
highest, second
It does.
highest out of after Fauquier, number of conservation easements or acreage covered in
So
conservation
what is a
easements.
conservation easement?
So it essentially puts restrictions on what can happen with the property. So a lot of them are limited to a certain number of dwelling units or a certain number of buildings in general that you can have on the property. It's typically, I don't know what the baseline acreage is, but it's typically higher acreage. They still have development rights, which is a whole
So it's a deed restriction.
rabbit hole thing. Yes,
It's a deed restriction.
and they. I haven't actually watched a county easement authority meeting in a hot minute, so I haven't seen if they've had any.
But the largest is the
ones
Virginia
coming.
Outdoor Foundation, right?
Yes.
And I have several clients that I've worked with on that over the years. There's a benefit to it, right? Right? There's a tax benefit.
It's a tax benefit.
Huge tax benefit to go ahead and do that. But you get the tax, to simplify it, you put your property in a conservation easement, you get this pretty awesome tax benefit, but you can't do everything you want to do with your property. It restricts the use of what you could do in your property. And those who are out of buying, they need to understand what these restrictions are. And, you hire somebody like Bill Tucker or, with Charlottesville Settlement that will dig in your title search and learn it. But it was a great article. To me, it was a bit geeky. I love it.
Yeah, I had one of my
but-
coworkers read it too. I was like, "Is this too wonky? Is this too
Well,
jargony?"
I think
And-
it's wonky, but it's important since we're a real estate show for folks to understand that you got to understand what your restrictions are on the property.
Can a basic campground be part of a conservation easement?
There's
From Earl.
there's lots of different so conservation easements can be written up in many different
That's
ways
exactly
for
right.
multiple different purposes. You have different holders. The Virginia Outdoors Foundation holds some of them. The county holds some of them. The county has a program called the Acquisition of Conservation Easements program, which is intended to keep farms and agricultural lands intact. So there's different tax benefits and things, and they prioritize to not the wealthiest, and that was actually something that came up a couple of weeks ago.
they're going to be talking about.
They're,
it
yeah,
on
they're talking
Wednesday.
about how to calculate specifically the development rights and whether that they should formally plot them out or rather informally. So that's a good question. I do believe that actually has come up in a couple of recent. There's been a few special use permits for campgrounds, and I think in some cases this comes up. And again, you can build depending on the easement and what the rules are.
Jackson for Sean.
And
This
if
is
they're
from
informed.
Jackson, this is a good one. Conservation easements are a mechanism for the wealthy. Sean, prove me wrong.
You made a statement. I need more evidence. I mean, I'm not here to prove you wrong or right. I mean, as I just said, with the ACE program, that is intended to preserve land and to bring down the tax burden potentially for people. It is something there. It takes potentially a lot of,
You have to be fairly sophisticated.
well, you get to be
he's right.
sophisticated.
The gentleman
but,
is right. It's the mechanics of it. It ends up to be that way.
but
The barrier of entry is not low.
It is
well,
not
but
low.
the barrier of entry to own 100 acres of land is also pretty high.
Well,
I mean,
some of it is family property
inherited.
that's been
Yeah.
inherited, that's
Yeah.
been through that.
So, for
and-
instance, for instance, there's a parcel down in Campbell County that I would love from. This is the kind of, again, all of these are individual transactions and things.
Sure.
My father has about 6 acres next to where I grew up in Campbell County. I would love to see that never developed because the growth in that community is on a par with here, and he has people salivating for those. He can probably only get about 30 units because there's not enough water and sewer.
What's the zone?
R1 probably.
Yeah, so it has to get
But the
rezoned.
question is that, but yet, what would be the value? What would, I really would love to see that land preserved. Heck, I'd buy the house if I could, because I'd love to live in
You could
that
sell
house.
your house.
Yeah, I'm in the process.
Whoa, Sean
But
Collins.
you need
I know a realtor.
you need a
No,
realtor.
no. I got a realtor. I'm not going to say who it is. But
Got it. Good for you.
it's a long process.
Good for you.
But,
So you're going to
but-
sell the crib.
Stick with that.
But
person.
again, but
You
in
moving, dog?
no. But
moving?
no, well, possibly. But there
But
are.
let's go back to
there are
the
things.
question, because I think-
This is breaking news right here.
No,
Sean
no.
Thompson piecing out.
I own property in the community, and I'm a landowner, and of course, I'm not. I don't have a job. Cheers. Now I'm never gonna get one.
Daniel Pettit. That's why 29 South is not growing. A lot of wealthy folks on 29 South.
Well, and it's not, doesn't
Well,
need
there's a
grocery
lot
and there's
more
no
than
water
that.
and sewer
Yeah, it's the water
Not
and
a lot of road
sewer.
infrastructure.
That 19
Well,
that 1971 comprehensive plan looked and said that North Garden would be a lot bigger, but getting water and sewer there is the difference between how much density you can fit. Now, having said that, we talked about fire and rescue. This year's budget includes 5 full-time firefighters to serve the North Garden area. So investment
And where are
isn't
they gonna
necessarily.
live?
Well, who knows? But when they're at the
Waynesboro.
Shenandoah Valley.
Yeah.
when
no,
they're
really.
when they're there, they'll
Maybe
be
Lake
living in
Monticello.
the fire department because there's
I
3
know a realtor.
thingies. Yeah.
Hey,
No, but going back to the thing,
Sean,
I didn't
kudos-
mean to be flip, but I would say is that it's a complicated. Real estate's complex. All the stuff we've talked about
course.
is complex, and it's hard to make one size fits all determinations. So yeah,
I can't believe I'm going to ask him this. You want to go first?
no, you go first.
Okay.
You go
All right.
first.
England. I'm moving in with Pam.
This gentleman.
Happy birthday,
This
Pam.
gentleman. You ready for this?
Go ahead.
Okay. This gentleman tracks property transfers
Who?
fairly closely.
You.
Oh, who me? Oh yeah.
And you send them out regularly.
I do.
I know.
Just posted. Augusts are now public on infocville.com.
I think we got a heads up to that yesterday.
The Substack, people who subscribe to Substack, it's the one premium
Can
I
I ask you a
give.
question? This is a
Yes.
branding question. I'm a branding guy.
Uh-huh.
Why do you have so many brands?
They're not. They're actually just places I put stuff. I don't brand
it should
anything.
all be one brand.
No. Well, no, it's me. I'm the
Well,
brand.
I'm very.
gonna be tough to sell.
I've subscribed and will
but-
continue to
but the
subscribe
difference
as well
is-
as I do to the Daily Progress. My wife asks me what I read every morning. It's short.
Sean, why don't you do county transactions?
But the difference is because it's more difficult. Because actually, I'll say the reason is because Charlottesville has a great open data portal that is easy to get
Yeah,
the data.
sure.
I am working to try to figure out how to get it from the county. It's
I
just
think you have
not
to go
as
to the
easy. You have to go
border.
through, and I haven't figured out how to manipulate it. Going back to the branding, the Info CVille is basically just. It's an archive site. When I started this a year ago, it was an experiment. I sort of jumped out of an airplane, so to speak, and so I'm still trying to figure it out. And that includes what I really want to do when I grow up.
Okay.
I'm
This is the question I have for you guys. The transactions that you're tracking.
Mm-hmm.
What are the trends you are seeing? Besides prices at closing prices well ahead of assessments.
I would say, again, just focus on the city of Charlottesville. The residential markets are mostly up. It's amazing to see how many people purchase homes, invest in them, but those investments don't show up in building permit data. They don't show up in the assessments. The real trend is going to be to wait until 2022 to see what the assessments are going to be. Going back to the revenue sharing thing, the revenue sharing is based on a formula. So the tax increases, the assessments in 2022 in Charlottesville are going to be crazy because they're based on comps. Most residential property is selling well above assessment, except in a lot of cases where the property is distressed, and usually in those situations you'll have an LLC come in, they'll invest in it, and that house
So we're
will
going
sell
down the
for
road
$600.
of tax assessed versus rate. Are we going down that road? road now, or
It's going to
or
be
not?
interesting because again, I don't think enough people really realize what is on the table in Charlottesville. Our current capital improvement budget is based on a 10-cent tax rate increase.
Sure.
When I have talked to the new candidates, the candidates from this race, they have said, "Oh, we're going to have to look at that in the future." But again, it's all of these needs. You got to. How do we pay for this? It all boils down to one
So
question.
for those
How
who do
we
not
pay?
know what a capital improvement plan is, each jurisdiction creates this plan. It's a wish list. This
Budget.
is-
Well, no, because because when you get down to the budgeting thing, it's no longer a wish list. It's what you're actually
Well,
telling.
out years are a little bit of a.
Yeah, but you still have to sit. Well, that's really
Sean.
nerdy. But for the first year, for that 1 year,
It's a budget.
yes, it's a budget.
It's a budget, but if you don't have the money, it's a wish.
It's a wish, but that's the thing.
But
If
what they
you have-
do, but so folks understand this, they create this budget, they create this list of things that they want to produce. Then obviously what you're talking about is now they have to raise the capital to go ahead and pay that. That's why it's called
Yeah.
a capital improvement.
And the 5-year
Project.
thing is basically saying we will have to float X amount of bonds in order
Sure.
to finance
Exactly
that. So you have to look in then. So
And you float bonds.
in the city of Charlottesville,
That bond rating is important.
in the city of Charlottesville, it boils down to one thing. How big of a school reconfiguration? How big is the new
But that's
Beaufort
not
Middle School going to
exclusive to
be?
Charlottesville.
No.
$100 million.
But
$100 million.
But unlike other communities, the budget staff here has clearly said you're going to have to raise taxes by you have to raise the tax rate by
there's a
10
whole-
cents in order to pay for it, and that's a question that a future council will have to make.
Barbara Lundgren, I'm simply trying to keep the family farm in the family, and the county is fighting me all the
Oh, yeah.
time. My address is Scottsville.
Yeah.
Barbara Lundgren, I am empathetic to your plight,
Very
and
much
I
so.
miss seeing you once a week, Barb.
They do not make it easy.
No.
But I think, well, I mean, again, I don't know.
Well, the whole tax, appraise.
Contact me, and I'd love to talk more.
You want me to tag Barb and you?
No, because I'll find her. I need to talk to her anyway about something else.
So we'll have a whole separate show about tax assessed and rate and budget and because the budget season's about ready to get started.
Put the budgets up.
Never ends.
We can put budgets up there.
You want me to do that?
Yeah, why not? I mean, not right now, but.
But we can do budgets.
this.
But I do
Sure.
want to give since this is tomorrow's 9/11, I do want to give a shit out. Good boy.
How's
Sorry
that?
about- whoa.
Hey, there we are.
Turn that volume down for me if you could, Judah. Actually, I'll just turn it off there. It's that
I gotta
remote
lose my
next to you,
weight.
sir.
So
In fact, you know what? Go back to the Keep Smith screen. I'm sorry I put some extra effort on you there.
yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
I'm good. I can wait.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
So I wanted to give a shout out to Ginny Bixby.
Yeah.
Ginny
Her colleague.
Yeah, she wrote. I ordered it today. A really cool book called This Very Tree, and it's a children's book. And not she didn't write it, but Sean Rubin wrote it. And it's an interesting story. It's about a story of a pear tree that actually survived in the center of the two towers of 9/11. They moved it out to the Bronx. I didn't know they had trees in the Bronx, but they moved it out to the Bronx. Maybe it's Brooklyn. They don't have trees. I can't remember.
Yeah, I think it's Brooklyn.
Well, that was a tree
That's it.
grows in Brooklyn. It was a great book, but actually a great article. Please, read it. Folks, read it. And tomorrow's 9/11, and please keep all the folks that we lost in your heart and souls. Tomorrow it was kind of personal for me, and thank you for doing this because I was struggling with that this morning. How to handle that. So
Love you, homie.
I love you too, man.
11:50. I don't know if you knew what you got yourself into when you committed to the show here. Are you
Yeah.
having a good time?
Oh yeah, no, this has been great.
Okay.
I like spending time. No offense to you guys, but Sean is great because I think
Yeah, we're over here. It's
he
okay.
gets what I'm saying, but he can explain it better because he's been here a lot longer.
Well, I was thinking through this whole thing, and at some point,
You should come back.
well,
She's legit.
absolutely, you're welcome anytime, Allison. But
If you're willing to.
if you're willing to, but I was wondering
I'll bring
if
champagne.
I'm trying to make a point here.
Sorry.
Sorry. Just letting you know.
Don't interrupt him.
It is my show. I am the executive producer.
And the
What am I?
casting- and the casting director.
I'm the casting director. I'd like to get a few words in, if you don't mind. No, he's not even paying attention to me.
No, I'm trying to see if he can cut my mic.
This guy's truly a squirrel.
Squirrel.
No,
Girl.
I mean, Judah can cut my mic at any.
We don't
We have Judah and I have little signals for that to happen. It has not happened yet. But I was wondering, it'd be really, at our next roundtable with Sean, if you can share a mic with me, that might be, you might want to join us for that. We'll talk about that offline.
Oh, yeah.
See if technically we can do that with Judah and Jerry.
She's my aunt.
To your aunt. You're on it. You
Neil
got another one
coming
hidden there
back from
somewhere?
his vacation, his beach vacation that he bragged
So,
about.
little wrap up, a shout out to Matthew Gilligan.
I'll end that for you if you want me to.
Yeah. That's Bill Tucker calling me.
I know it is. Quentin Beckham was good listening to you guys. The president of CAR, Quentin Beckham, we love you, homie.
Shout out to Matthew Gilligan. It's out there. He posted CVille plans together, response to frequently asked questions. It's about 11 pages. If you haven't read it,
That dude is a beast.
yeah, he just, I don't think he ever sleeps, to be honest with you.
I mean, he's got 3 kids. He does not sleep.
He does not sleep. But really great. We don't have time to go into it today. Maybe we'll save it for a different show. But some really great questions and responses and from the public on that. Take an opportunity to go ahead and read it. Anything else, sir?
How about some closing statements and some final words? We'll go ladies first.
Oh, gosh.
Sean, this is a natural opportunity for you to promote what you do for a living here, my friend. Allison, the show is yours.
Yeah, what do I say? Closing statements. Yeah, this was fun.
It's not that official.
You can say anything you
Yeah,
want.
it was a good time. I don't know. It's
Can I ask you this as a closing statement?
sure.
Albemarle County State of the Union.
Ooh.
Anywhere you want to go on that?
Oh, I mean, I think Albemarle, kind of like what the city is doing now, but a little different, is about to embark on their comprehensive plan update, which
Yep.
is your plan for the future. And I think that's going to be very telling in how Albemarle wants to go in the future, mainly because I think there is a few crossroads that where things don't quite match up in the current plan versus where I think the county wants to go and where people in the county want it to go, and master plans kind of. So it'll be an interesting update process, and they're trying to kind of make. I think they are going to do a zoning ordinance update, but not a zoning map update to the extent that the city is. They may do a little bit here
Well,
and there.
they're
but
called ZTAs. They're going to do some zoning text
yes,
amendments.
and make it more friendly.
They're gonna change
and
some of the languages
update
in the
things.
text, yeah.
Yes,
But
and
it's-
so it'll be an interesting process that I think is supposed to start soon, fall, which is in.
So
a
it's
few weeks, so.
interesting. We were back to comprehensive plan and Sean's comment. I won't name jurisdictions, but there are some jurisdictions within our geographical region. They literally just brush off the old one and stamp it and just keep on going. Where is City of Charlottesville and Albemarle and other jurisdictions take a harder, more detailed look at it. But there are, they are required to do it every 5 years, and the requirements are pretty minimal, right? They just need to go through the process and vote on it, public comments and so forth and so on. But
I think Nelson County's will be really interesting because they adopted theirs in 2002, and as you said, it really hasn't changed. But but I think though that with the additional excess of what's the word I'm looking for, all of the commercial properties on 151, what's going to happen with Lovingston? It'd be interesting to see. That's one I'm interested in.
I know you're not a fan of Facebook, but please become a fan of Facebook,
just
because the last Friday of the
Want to grow a
month.
business. It's the top website in the world.
Yeah,
Just letting you know.
can-
It's
I
not
can-
a
it's
content
I
business.
can speak to that it does exactly that. But what I was going to get at, our coffee with the candidates on the last Friday of this month will be Nelson County. So we've got Jesse Rutherford's going to come in, and Ernie, forgot Ernie's last
Ernie
name.
Reed.
Thank you, Ernie Reed's last name. And that's going to be one of the questions. So the reason Neil does this, the reason I'm promoting you join it, you can chime in with questions. And
I definitely
answer.
will. I think it's the North District.
You too, Allison. Please,
Whichever one
please join us.
is on the 151 corridor, I think that's a contested seat. The guy who's been in that seat, Harvey, I think Thomas
it's
Harvey.
correct.
Females running against
Yeah, it's
him.
and I think that's interesting because I do think that the future of Nelson is the future of all these places.
Yeah, so I want
yeah.
to bring in the school board, but this really works much better at 4. And if you get much more than, unless we really are super comfortable with each other and handing mics and fighting over mics, because Allison, you will never shut up, so it's hard to get it away
This
from
guy likes to talk.
and I've been good this show.
This has been a hell of a show. I'm talking with Jesse Rutherford, and it is, who is the person? I'll come up with the name
Yeah.
who's running against him.
Yeah, so we're working on a show for the contested version of Nelson County. So we're well, the point I was trying to make is, we've got enough jurisdictions, enough folks running. I'm probably not going to get to the school boards on that. Maybe the city will do because, again, we're missing one candidate apparently.
My friend, your turn to promote your biz, and then we close.
Actually, I was looking to find a script. Does anybody remember the character Tim Calhoun from Saturday Night Live? Will Forte played him. Remember, he was the guy who was so. I was looking for the script, and I was just going to do that because that'd be more fun.
Yeah. Saturday Night Live, I kind of go back to Jim Belushi.
Anyway,
the 70s.
yes, I write things, I do podcasts, and of course, and as I say, I disclaim I don't know anything. That's why I do what I do.
Well, first of all, you're wrong. I won't let you get away with that. He doesn't let me get away with that.
It's a professional stance of how I approach my work.
Well, and I will tell you, I read all your stuff, and
Sean, you
I
do a
learn
hell of a job, dude.
I learn
It's
something
legit.
every time I read your stuff. Allison, I also learn something every time. My bar's
Well, I'm
a little
announcing my fourth website today.
Oh God!
A new brand?
No. But I am hopeful to get Charlottesville Podcasting Network back under my control in the near future.
So what are the brands?
I mean, it's basically
realize
Town
with the
Crier
website's
Productions.
another
The
brand,
reason
you
it's called
realize.
Town Crier Productions is because that's the umbrella organization under which all this stuff does. The problem with putting out stuff on Substack is that it's difficult to find it once you write that stuff. So you have to put it on a different thing. And I am slowly rolling out the Info CVille thing, which had a different name, which I refused to use because it was too elite. You want to guess what it was?
Tell us.
Can I do it? Okay.
Sure, yeah.
This is Charlottesville, which I thought was way too kind of like. I mean, who am I to say what
All right,
Charlottesville
I'm going to
is?
give you. How about this? Let's.
Anyway, go back. Can we go back to the solemn stuff again?
No solemn stuff. I'm just putting my hat on in remembrance of my.
That was a very, very dark day. And I remember, if I can get one quick recollection, it was the one time I worked
This
an
is what
overnight
you should call
shift.
it right there. This is literally what I do for a living.
he's working.
CharlottesvilleNewsNetwork.com.
No,
Call it the
I don't.
CharlottesvilleNewsNetwork.com.
If you
Create
look-
one brand for everything. Trust me.
If you look very carefully at all of what I've done, I am
25 cents a
hesitating.
month.
I am hesitating to call it news. And there's a reason why, which I haven't exactly figured out, because I'm just one person. I don't have a staff. I'm putting out information, and
Well-
I think the word news is something we have to kind of reimagine as we go through the 21st century.
Well,
So Info Network, Info CVille. Are we done yet?
Yeah.
Did you want to share your
We're working on
memory
it.
really
We're trying
quick?
to do
What's
this.
that now?
Spam?
You're about to share a memory.
Oh, I was. Oh, thank you. Yeah. No, it was just.
Allison,
it was.
thank you.
It was.
These two guys went off. You and I are on the same wavelength.
It
Thank
was
you.
on 9/11. I have an association with WVTF Public Radio, and that night they wanted somebody. All their stuff was automated overnight, but because things were so uncertain and we
Sure.
didn't know what the heck was going to happen, they wanted somebody on site to just be there in case there was an emergency. So it was the only time I ever worked the board at WVTF Public Radio. And I have just recently, I will put a plug in for this, I'm working with Radio IQ to create a civil discussion series. The first one is out. It's on policing in Virginia. You can find me and I can point you in the direction of that. But I'm really
Allison,
grateful.
Where were you on 9/11?
I was in third grade in my classroom.
Cleveland?
Yeah, in a suburb of Cleveland. So I've read a lot about memories, especially of traumatic times, and so I don't know if this is actually fully accurate, but I remember distinctly that day I was going to the library, and we had these little apples that you had to take to the library with the teacher's name on them, and I walked in with two of my classmates who I remember exactly who they were, and the TVs that were up on the wall were right as you entered the library, and they had CNN or some news, probably multiple, they were like 4 or 5 TVs, and they had it on, and they told us, no, you can't come in, go back to your classroom. And then because of the plane that flew over Ohio, which I think was ultimately the plane that crashed in Pennsylvania,
Shanksville.
my mother pulled me out of school. So I left at 10 or 11 o'clock, so I wasn't even there very long. And then I remember going to soccer practice, and there was no one out on the roads at all, and gas was really cheap, and that's all
So
I
what was it
remember.
like growing up these 20 years since then?
I think it's been...
Did it mold who you are, or did it have any effect on your life?
It's interesting because, especially with the war, I've basically, my entire life has we've been in a war
We've been
in
in war.
this country, which is really wild to think about because it doesn't feel that way every day when I wake up, or didn't feel that way. And I have family friends who were either killed in Afghanistan or Iraq, or served and then died for a couple various reasons when they came back
One of the
to the
highest
United
suicide
States.
rates.
And it's a very strange feel. I feel like we, especially, I don't know, as a younger person, think of war and I think of World War II, and and it doesn't feel like that. And I know some people who did join the military after college, and was definitely worried for their safety regularly, but they have all.
So I'm a
made it back.
Marine, and we've been doing this battle for a while. I wear a set of hearing aids because of Hezbollah in Beirut in '83. So this is nothing new for the last 20 years. It's just 9/11 put it. I'm going to ask Jerry to put the feed in from the show a year ago today. That was, and I'm going to give a shout out to Jerry here, and he probably is not going to like this, but watch that show and watch the last 5 minutes. Anybody really want to know what Jerry Miller's made out of? Watch the last few minutes of that conversation that he had, and the two of us were in tears talking about our fathers, because what I did on the show is I interviewed a very dear, I lost dozens of people I knew that day. And one in particular, we had Vinny Camash come in. We lost his dad, Rocco, excuse me, and he was a window washer on the North Tower. On this morning, yesterday morning, tomorrow morning, 20 years ago, and we did an interview with him at Ground Zero. He goes there every 9/11, and I was honored. We were honored because he told Fox News, I don't have time to talk to you. I'm talking to Keith and Jerry. And did us before that. Then the second half of the show, I talked to my father, who's a retired New York City fireman, and on that stuff. Jerry's going to put it in the feed. Do yourself a favor, watch it. If you kind of never forget. If you kind of forgetting a little bit, watch it, and it brings it home. And when Vinny talks about he goes there because they've never found his father, that's his place of honor, that's his burial ground. It hits home. So.
Well said. Good way to close.
Yep.
Keith Smith, the man of character and integrity, unafraid to show emotion, and that's why we love him. Sean Tubbs, fantastic individual as well. We love you, Sean. Allison Wrabel, I've enjoyed the time we all have with you. This is Real Talk, where we do just that, real talk. Thank you for joining us
Officially,
on the I Love CVille
the
Network.
longest show we've ever done.
Not quite an Irishman.
Ever done.
And he's got something at 12:30, so we got to hustle.
You guys have a good afternoon. Take
Goodbye.
care. Thank you for joining us.
I was never here.
Excellent work. We're going to get a photo real quick of everybody. Good work. Good work.
And it means something to me to put a hat on his hair. Thanks, Allison.
Oh, sure, no problem. Thanks for having me.